She was my wife, my boss, and the one who ended my career with a single sentence. I thought losing my job was the worst day of my life, until I realized I'd also lost her. I still remember the exact moment I realized my marriage and my career were both unraveling at the same time. I was sitting across from my wife, Claire, though at the office she was always Miss Carter. She ran the entire regional division, the kind of position that came with a corner office, a private assistant, and the final word on every decision. Me. I was just a mid-level sales rep, tucked a few rungs down on the corporate ladder. When she first got promoted, I was nervous, sure. But with a few layers of management between us, I figured we could make it work. Keep things professional. Separate. I couldn't have been more wrong. She barely looked at me when she spoke. Logan, your sales numbers are the lowest in the entire division. We've reviewed everything. I'm afraid there's nothing else we can do. I sat there frozen. She continued, calm and composed like it was any other business matter. Jared is outside. He'll walk you to your desk so you can collect your things. Jared, or Jay, as most people called him, was one of our building's security guards. We used to joke with him in the break room. Now he was the guy escorting me out of a job I'd given 9 years of my life to. Everyone in the office knew Claire and I were married, even if we played the part of strangers at work. She'd kept her maiden name for professionalism, she always said. On my desk, I had a photo of her shaking hands with the CEO on the day of her promotion. She looked radiant, proud. That moment used to mean something to me. Now it just made me sick. That's it? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. 9 years of loyalty and not even a private conversation? You didn't even try to talk to me, personally. And for the record, I still love you. But I can't believe how cold you've become. Claire blinked. Her expression was unreadable. Maybe that was the part that hurt the most. For someone as intelligent as you are, you really fumbled this, I added, my voice rising. And yes, I am angry. Furious, actually. Have I ever once had a poor performance review? Ever been written up, coached, warned? Of course not. But suddenly I'm disposable? Did you even stop to ask why my numbers were down? She didn't answer. I'll tell you why, I continued, bitter now. Because I was trying to keep everything afloat. This marriage, this job, while you were too busy chasing bonuses and board seats. She tried to cut me off, told me not to make a scene. I just shook my head. I'm done begging, I said. I've got to be up early tomorrow to see if there's anything left of my reputation to salvage. You've turned my life into a wreck. Logan, she started. I'm going to bed. That night, she came into our bedroom and found it empty. I hadn't told her, but I'd already moved into the guest room, the bigger one with its own bathroom. I planned to stay there for a while. The next morning, she was pounding on the door. For God's sake, Logan, she yelled, you stink. And you're starting to get a gut. You might be okay living like a slob, but I'm not. I didn't answer. She sighed heavily. I'm sorry, okay? I know I messed up. But like you said, I can't unring the bell. Her voice softened then, almost pleading. I miss you. I miss the way things used to be. I miss waking up with you. I miss us, in every way. I finally opened the door, held up my hand, and wiggled my fingers like they were puppets. I'm kind of seeing someone now, I said dryly. They don't nag. They don't lie. And they've never once asked me to explain myself. She stared, confused. I added, I'm talking about my own peace of mind. And then I walked away. Claire stood there in silence, and I said one last thing before I closed the door on whatever we used to be. I hope your promotion keeps you warm at night. I hope the praise from your colleagues and the glow of your next raise fill the void of a life with no family, no kids, and no one to grow old with. You climbed to the top, Claire. But you lost everything on the way up. He paused, looking at me like he was trying to read the truth behind my eyes. Tell me something, Claire, he said quietly. Is this hard on you because you're genuinely remorseful? Because you regret the way you handled everything and how badly you hurt me? Or is it hard because now the people around you are turning away, and you're feeling the weight of it for the first time? I didn't answer. I couldn't. He leaned forward just a little, his voice calm but cutting. You created a hostile environment the day you humiliated me in front of everyone. People saw it. They felt it. And now they don't respect you like they used to. I started sobbing, not the kind of tears you can hide but the kind that shakes your whole body. I cried so hard it took me nearly 20 minutes just to catch my breath. When I could finally speak, I whispered, Jen, can you open it? Please, tell me how bad it is. She nodded, took the envelope from my trembling hands and carefully opened it. As she read through the papers, her expression changed from confusion to shock. I could see her knees go weak as she slowly sat down on the couch, holding the documents like they were laced with poison. "The good news," she said softly, "is that he's not filing for divorce." For a second, just a second, my heart lifted. But then Jen raised her hand, signaling me not to get too comfortable. "The bad news," she continued, "is that he's going after the company. He's filing a lawsuit. Against Solomon Enterprises. Against Bob Adler. And against the chairman." I felt like the floor gave out beneath me. Later that week, I found myself in a quiet cafe, sitting across from Charles Solomon himself. The founder. The man who had built the company I had given so many years of my life to. "I hear your daughter just graduated from Wharton," I said, trying to sound composed. Charles chuckled. "She did. MBA with honors. Smart kid, smarter than I ever was, that's for sure. I'm giving her 3 years to settle in, then Susan and I are planning to disappear somewhere on a boat and let the next generation take over." "That sounds like a dream," I said, knowing exactly why I had asked to meet. "You already know why I'm calling, don't you?" he asked gently. I nodded. "I'm sorry, Beverly," he said with genuine regret in his voice. "But we've signed with a new supplier. They're cheaper, faster, and to be honest, their quality exceeds yours." He didn't sugarcoat it. "The difference is too significant for me to ignore. This isn't personal. It's just business." 3 days later, Dave was back in his own office, feet up, sipping a lukewarm coffee when a familiar voice called in through the door. It was Steve, an old colleague. They chatted for a few minutes about the usual stuff. Market trends, sports, the chaos of kids' soccer schedules. Then Steve casually dropped a question. "You ever heard of the RGP Group?" Dave sat up a little straighter. "Yeah," he said. "New firm out of South Korea. They've been trying to break into the US market." He remembered meeting the youngest son of the founder in an airport during a long flight delay. They struck up a conversation, ended up sharing stories about work, and the guy had even pulled out his laptop to show Dave some of their prototype products. Sleek, innovative, solid build. That conversation stuck with him more than he realized at the time. Later that night, Dave found himself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in the past. His thoughts wandered back to when he first met Claire. She was this determined, bright-eyed young woman with a hunger for success that was impossible to ignore. She had goals, ambition, and the drive to match. He thought about the night she got her first big promotion. He'd taken her out to this fancy place they normally wouldn't have splurged on, but it didn't matter. He wanted to celebrate her win. She hesitated, saying it was too much, too expensive. So he pulled out his very first bonus check and told her with pride that she wasn't the only one getting recognized for hard work. And afterward, well, that celebration carried late into the night. Was love. Pure, unfiltered love. Now it was all distant memories. Back in the present, he sat across from a woman from the State Employment Commission. She explained her role as a neutral third party, an arbitrator. Whatever agreement they reached today wouldn't be final, not until it was fully written down and notarized. But even with that formality hanging in the air, the room felt heavy with consequence. She pressed record and asked them to introduce themselves. Dave didn't look at Claire. He just leaned forward, cleared his throat, and said, "Let's get started." The arbitrator explained calmly that if the two of us couldn't come to an agreement, or if either of us disagreed with her recommendations, we still had options. We could appeal to the state commission over in the capital. And if that didn't work out, well, court was always on the table. She thanked the HR rep for showing up and confirming some of the more technical points, like how the company had planned to roll out the new supplier's product as soon as the current inventory dipped below a certain point. It was a smart strategy, really. The older stock would be moved at a discount, and the profit margins on the new stuff would more than cover it. From a business perspective, it made sense. Still, I couldn't help but think, so that's what I got thrown under the bus for. Yeah, I played some golf. Took clients out for steak dinners. I schmoozed. But I also talked projections, built trust, and laid groundwork that would have paid off tenfold down the road. And I never, not once, forgot I had a duty to the company. My immediate boss knew all of that. Every meeting. Every client interaction. It was all logged. All discussed. But if I hadn't been smoothing things over and running interference behind the scenes, Bob Adler, the ever-so-charming executive VP, would have driven one of our biggest clients right out the door. And fast. And Claire? She was just sitting there, silent, her eyes unfocused. Like she wasn't even in the room anymore. I could see it, her mind spinning, trying to piece it all together. Why didn't I know about this? I imagine she was asking herself. I'm the CEO. Why didn't I have this information? And maybe, just maybe, she was hearing the same voice I heard for years, quiet but persistent. The voice saying she should have listened more. Should have asked more. Should have stopped treating my job like it was a hobby. That truth finally hit her about a week ago, if I had to guess. Right around the time she finished half a bottle of scotch alone in the living room. She told me later that's when she finally admitted it to herself. That she'd been brushing off my role for years, acting like it didn't really matter. Like I was tagging along while she steered the ship. And now the ship was taking on water, and I was the only one who saw it coming. She was still trying to keep her cool, trying to put the pieces together like it was just another puzzle to solve. But then her attorney dropped a bombshell. Turns out Bob, Mr. Adler, had been in quiet talks with the company we were merging with. Negotiating, of all things, to take her job. Her position. The one she worked years to build. The one she used to define herself. The new corporate directives were blunt. Remove the cancer immediately. They meant Claire. And the irony? The very man she trusted to help her take me down was now planning to replace her the moment those merger papers were signed. I guess betrayal's a dish that gets passed around at that level. I heard later that one of our old clients reached out, the one I used to manage directly. They told her straight up, "Look, yes, we had a handshake deal with Dave. But after he left, that commitment didn't mean much anymore. And honestly, the new supplier from Korea is offering better specs at a better price." And it was true. That Korean company? They were hungry. Smart. The owner's son, Gene, was the guy I'd met years ago during a layover at O'Hare. We'd shared an awkward airport dinner and ended up talking shop for an hour. I remembered being genuinely impressed. The guy wasn't just riding on his father's name. He had vision. Apparently, our old purchasing agent had met him since then too. Said Gene was honest, direct, the kind of guy you could trust. And that trust was already winning him contracts we used to have. Meanwhile, I was looking at a place out in the hills, an old building with good bones, a bit of land, and enough space to finally build that workshop I'd always dreamed of. I pictured shelves of tools, sawdust in the air, the sound of something real being made by hand. Out back, there'd be space for a vegetable garden. Nothing fancy. Just something I could grow. Something that didn't lie. I always wanted a garden. Something simple, just a patch of land where I could grow tomatoes, basil, maybe some peppers. Funny how you put those dreams on hold when you're wrapped up in someone else's orbit. "I'm sorry, Claire," I told her, softly but firmly. "But after 8 years of standing in your shadow, I've learned to love the light." She looked at me stunned, like it had never crossed her mind that I might be happier without her. "So, where does that leave us?" she asked. There was this raw sadness in her voice, like she already knew the answer. I softened my tone even though the truth was already between us. "I wish I could tell you," I said honestly. "But I don't see us ever being husband and wife again. Marriage, real marriage, is built on respect. And I haven't felt that from you. Not as your partner. Not as your employee. Not in a long, long time." Meanwhile, Claire sat at the park a few days later, watching children chase bubbles across the grass. Her smile was fragile at first, tinted with regret, but after a while, it became something real. Something steady. Like a part of her remembered what it was like to feel again. And she knew exactly where to start rebuilding. Her first move? Firing Bob Adler. No pity. No hesitation. He'd manipulated her, flattered her ego, and made her believe he was acting in her best interest. In truth, he betrayed not just the company, but her and me. Claire wasn't stupid. She just wanted to believe the version of herself that Bob kept feeding her. The brilliant CEO. The irreplaceable leader. But now it was time to dig out the rot. One snake down. As for me, I was settling into the house. The paint on the outside had this rich, earthy tone that looked beautiful in the afternoon light, like it had always belonged in this quiet corner of the world. I'd torn out the old carpet and uncovered the original hardwood floors, had them sanded and polished until they gleamed like new. There was a wide wraparound porch now, with ceiling fans overhead to keep the summer heat at bay. I hung a porch swing on the west end so I could watch the sunset in peace. I could have afforded the house using my back pay and a chunk of my savings. But even then it would have come with a long mortgage. So instead, I sold some stocks I'd been sitting on for years. Figured I deserved to invest in something that was mine. Finally. And yeah, I was going to plant that garden. Do I miss her? Sometimes. I miss the little things. The late-night drives we used to take just to end up at some random bed and breakfast. Our secret code for making love in a place where no one knew our names. I missed the deep talks about the future, about dreams we once shared before ambition got in the way. Before she started believing her own headlines. But those memories, they're fading. The ones that linger are of the pride. The dismissiveness. The way she started looking at me like I was just another background character in her story. She was like a star athlete who believed her own press, so sure she was untouchable that she forgot how to be a teammate. I told her that once during one of our last real conversations. I said, "You've got a sharp mind. You know how to break a problem down, set goals, and crush them. But the truth is, I don't think you want me back. Not really. And if I'm being honest, someone who hesitates this much? Who second-guesses herself in the big moments? That's not top-tier leadership." She flinched when I said it. Her face turned red, jaw tightening like she was about to fire back. But she didn't. Maybe because she knew I was right. "You used to be unstoppable," I added. "I remember when nothing, not even the gates of hell, could keep you from chasing what you wanted." Her silence said more than any comeback ever could. But she wasn't giving up. Not yet. She dove into websites, obsessing over ways to get back into my life. Cost wasn't an issue, whatever it took she was ready to pay. One night, fate gave her a breadcrumb. A man reached out, showing her a photo of the exact same model of the vintage car I used to talk about restoring. It was perfect from the front, but the back end was destroyed. Turns out, his nephews had taken it on an unsanctioned joyride and left the thing in ruins. She asked for a quote to fix it, and when she saw the number, she didn't blink. To her, if it brought her one step closer to being part of my life again, it was worth every penny. The old car had been sitting in a field for months, maybe longer. I pulled it out there after that joyride wreck. 2 of my nephew's kids had taken it for a spin without telling anyone. The front end had somehow survived, still gleaming like it rolled off the lot yesterday. The interior was spotless too, holding on to its charm like it had been waiting for someone to care about it again. I was standing out there the day Claire came by. She caught sight of me holding a little girl, maybe 3-4 years old at most. One arm wrapped around my neck, her tiny hands raining kisses across my cheeks, laughing like the world had never known pain. I was smiling. And that was the moment I saw it hit Claire. Like a thunderclap across a sunny sky. Her expression cracked, barely noticeable but real. That smile she'd been trying to wear faltered, and something cold and sharp moved through her. She realized right then that she would never give me children. Not anymore. Not at our age. And you could see the regret wash over her. This tidal wave of sorrow for all the years we spent chasing promotions and titles while time slipped through our fingers. Claire had always put her career first. So had I, in a way. But I would have made room. I was ready once. She wasn't. And by the time she was, we'd run out of road. There was nothing she could do to change that now. And I think it gutted her. She tried to pull herself together. I saw her force her thoughts away, try to stay present. She knew if she wanted to stay in this moment with me, with us, she'd have to stop drifting into the past or spiraling over what couldn't be undone. I called her Han that day. Just once. She nearly broke. Later, she told Susan, "He called me Han. I don't even remember the last time he said that." Susan, ever the truth teller, said, "Maybe he's finally done holding everything in. Maybe that's a good thing." Claire admitted, "I deserved a lot of what he said." Still hurt to hear it though. She looked tired. But not in the usual way. More like a woman trying to unwrite years in the space of one weekend. "I came here to see if we could start over," she told Susan. "And running away just because it's hard? That's not how you fix a marriage. So do me a favor, whatever happens, stay out of it. This is heavyweight business now." Of course, things didn't stay calm for long. We were in the garden, and Claire overheard something she didn't like. I had mentioned something about Mara, my neighbor, someone who had been in my life a bit lately. Claire took offense to a private detail I'd shared, something about Mara not wanting kids. I didn't even think twice when I said it. Before she could go off, I stepped in. "That's not exactly true," I told her. "Mara never said she didn't want children. She never made it a priority. But I've seen her around kids. She's great with them." That's when Marcia chimed in, sweet, blunt Marcia. "Oh," she said. "Why didn't you want kids, Mara?" "Manners, Marcia," I said quickly. "You don't know this woman well enough to ask something so personal." She shrank a little, eyes wide. "Sorry? I didn't mean it to be rude." Her apology was genuine. And honestly, it said more about her character than anything else. A little while later, the same little girl tugged on my pant leg. "Pick?" she asked, pointing to one of the bright yellow tomatoes. I smiled and lifted her easily. She giggled the whole way as I carried her over to the row of vines. I set her down, and with the care of a seasoned gardener, she twisted the tomato loose, holding it high like a little trophy. "Eat," she said, grinning up at Claire. "She wants you to wash it first," I laughed. "She won't eat anything that hasn't been cleaned." I taught her that. I use organic pesticides, but still. Rules are rules. Claire nodded, almost in awe. You could see the questions behind her eyes. What kind of life has he been living? What has he built that I never knew existed? Before Marcia left, Claire hugged her tightly, gave her a card and scribbled her personal number on the back. If you ever need anything, she told her, voice shaky but sincere, I mean anything, call me. Please. Marcia started crying again. She clung to both of us before walking away, slowly, quietly, until she disappeared down the lane. I stood there on the porch for a while, rocking gently in the swing, lost in thought. Claire sat down beside me, silent at first. She sighed. But it wasn't a tired sigh this time. It was the kind that says I see it now. All of it. And I don't know if I can ever have it again. I lost my way, Dave, Claire said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know when it happened exactly, but I'm ready to come home. I need help finding the way back. And I'm hoping you'll guide me. Something in her voice, the vulnerability, the humility, cut right through the armor I'd built up over the last few years. She nodded toward me gently. I think counseling is a really good idea. We can't just patch this up with sweet words and a few good meals. This is deeper. If you're open to it, maybe we could start looking together? I think that's smart, I said, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll find someone we both feel good about. And we'll go from there. But no half measures, Claire. We both have to show up for this. She leaned in then, crying into my shoulder. Not dramatic tears. Just quiet, aching sobs. After a few minutes, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. One of our priorities, she said carefully, should be to work on our intimacy again. I'm not expecting us to share a bed right away, but maybe we could start finding each other in small ways again. Emotionally. Physically. When it feels right. And just like that, the weight between us shifted. Not gone, but lighter. That morning there was a small knock at the bedroom door. She doesn't need cereal, hon, Claire said, her voice steady again. She needs a real breakfast. I called through the door, give us 5 minutes to get dressed and we'll be down. Or hey, we'll take you all out if there's nothing in the fridge. Outside, Mara just nodded, clearly overwhelmed, trying to juggle Ari, who was in full squirm mode. Come on, little one, she said softly. Let's get you some juice while Mr. Dave and Miss Beverly get ready. As soon as the door closed, Claire turned to me, smirking through the last of her tears. I was really hoping for some overdue reconnecting, she said, placing a hand on my chest. But it can wait. Sort of. I appreciate your patience, I said with a wink. I owe you. Later that afternoon, I took Mara aside. You understand what we're offering, right? She didn't answer. Just flew into my arms and cried like she'd been holding everything in for years. Claire, who had just laid down a sleepy Ari, joined the hug too. We held each other in silence, and for the first time in a long while, the air felt clean. Eventually, I slipped away to the living room and sank into my old recliner, the one that always managed to find the perfect angle. I sat there in stillness, thinking about how my entire world had shifted in just a day. Claire came down and surprised me by curling up beside me. She looked at me with that same look from years ago, the one from before the boardrooms and the titles. Just a woman in love, finally sitting still with the man she almost lost. We've stayed in that house long enough, she said. That's why we're selling it. I don't ever want to sleep there again. I want warmth. I want this. They came back later, her car stuffed with boxes, bags, and a very chatty Ari in tow. Why didn't you take the truck? I asked Claire. She smacked my arm playfully. Now you bring that up? Fine. We'll use it next time. Think about what you want for dinner, I said, rolling up my sleeves. I'm feeling inspired. And I threw together a stir-fry, chicken breast, fresh zucchini, carrots, bell peppers from the market. Red and yellow, ripe and sweet. It wasn't fancy, but the colors alone made Claire raise her brows in surprise. I caught her smiling to herself while we unpacked. After our showers we flirted a bit, played around like we used to, but time wasn't on our side. Mara had cooked breakfast, and the kitchen was filled with that perfect mix of food and family. Ari demanded a goodbye kiss before heading out, and we gave one to Marcia too, didn't want her to feel left out. She'd been a rock during all of this. Marcia drove Claire's car to drop me off, so we didn't have to worry about moving the car seat. Claire took the truck to work. At the office, Jen came bursting in with her usual energy. You're going to laugh, she said, but I'm already making plans. I'm going to need a personal assistant in 3 months. She glanced at Mara. It requires at least a 2-year degree though. So night classes. And listen, if you stop going or fail, the job offer disappears. Deal? Mara's eyes widened. She looked like she'd just been handed a second chance. Deal? She whispered. That's where we are now. Not fixed. Not perfect. But hopeful. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm fighting alone. Let me know if you'd like me to craft an epilogue or another chapter. We can follow Mara's journey, dive into Claire's attempt at redemption, or show what happens when peace finally settles into a life once filled with noise. I have faith in you, sweetheart, Claire said, her voice a little raspy as the lights went out. Please, don't let us down. By then, Marcia had finally stopped crying, tucked into a warm blanket and a safer place than she'd had in a long time. Claire and I climbed into bed, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones but still leaves room for peace. As soon as she slid beneath the sheets, I pulled her close and kissed her, firmly, intentionally. She looked at me, eyes soft. Not that I'm complaining, but what was that for? For what you did today. For Marcia. For Ari. For showing up like you meant it. We lay there in silence for a moment, just listening to the night sounds through the open window. It felt good just being. No pressure. No plans. But that didn't last long. About school, she said, already slipping into strategy mode. We can look into enrollment for Marcia in a couple of months. After she's found her rhythm at work. And we'll need to get her a car, I added. Nothing flashy. Something safe, reliable, easy to park. Claire smiled in the dark. You're in charge of that. I trust you. Just, no hot rods. Fair enough, I said, pulling her closer. But now we sleep. The next morning we woke up smiling. Partly because we had a plan, and partly because Ari had decided to be our personal alarm clock. Her tiny footsteps and squeals of, Mr. Dave, I'm up, made it impossible not to laugh. Later, at the store, Claire noticed a few strangers giving her some curious glances. She leaned into me and whispered, they think I'm your social worker or something. I shrugged. Could be worse. Might even treat you better that way. When we got back home, dinner was already in motion. Ari and I had grilled some chicken, sliced up fresh vegetables, and set the picnic table out back. Nothing fancy, but you'd think we'd worked a 12-hour shift in the salt mines based on how quickly everyone devoured it. I wish I'd recorded the look on Saul's face earlier when I told him why I was late. Ari had fallen asleep on my chest in the waiting room, her little fingers still locked around my neck. I didn't have the heart to wake her, so I stayed put, phone in hand, texting Susan with one thumb while holding a sleeping bundle in the other arm. That evening, Ari excitedly told everyone how she'd started school with her new friends, and a sweet woman named Miss Rose. She was doing her best to pronounce all the names, stumbling over them but beaming the whole time. Before dinner, I kissed Claire, then bent down and kissed Marcia gently on the cheek. Get changed, girls. Ari and I made dinner, and it's almost ready. Ari tagged along behind them, trying to hold both their hands at once as they made their way into the house, her voice a soft song of laughter and made-up words. 10 minutes later, they re-emerged, clean, dressed in shorts and t-shirts, even Ari, who looked proud of herself in her little pink sneakers. The picnic table was quickly set. Lemonade and sweet tea were poured, the food passed around, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like a home again. The judge overseeing Ari's case had gone into private practice after retiring from the bench. She was selective, only took a handful of clients at a time, and didn't suffer fools. But she had a kind heart. Ari adored her, especially her long silver hair, which she liked to braid and twist while sitting on her lap during visits. The judge didn't sugarcoat things though. In this case, custody should be fairly straightforward, she told us. Marcia's the sister. The child's already in a stable home. She has steady employment. It's just a matter of documentation and timing. It was more good news than we dared to expect. After dinner, I came back into the house and kissed both Claire and Marcia, hugging them tightly. I don't remember saying much, just soaking it in. The moment. The shift. The subtle but real beginning of something new. People like to say marriage counseling is just a few sit-downs and a couple of breakthroughs. It wasn't like that for us. Our counselor was sharp, smart enough to spot our patterns within 10 minutes. She had us start with separate sessions. I want you to tell me, she said to each of us, why you split up, and why you think you want to come back together. Simple question. But not easy. And neither of us dared to lie. Counseling wasn't easy. Claire and I went into it thinking we could talk our way back to each other, but it was messier than that. Some sessions ended with us shouting, others with one of us storming out. But there were also days we just sat together, quiet, crying into each other's arms like we were afraid of what letting go might mean. Claire brought all of her insight to the table. She didn't hold back. And neither did I. We had to strip it all down, past the bitterness, the blame, the years of distance and unspoken disappointment. We had to confront the choices we made. the people we became. And somewhere in all that wreckage we started finding each other again. 14 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, we stood beneath the flowered arch of the little Episcopal church we'd been attending. Claire was radiant. Not in the high-powered executive way, but in the way you only look when you've chosen peace, when you've fought your way back to love and decided to stay. Our small group of friends from the age-appropriate couples ministry were there, smiling, clapping, some wiping their eyes. JY even flew in from across the country with her husband and their baby boy. Sol stood proudly at my side as best man, and Susan, always the steady force, wore a dress to match Marcia, who stood opposite her. 6-year-old Ari stood between them, barefoot and grinning, holding a basket of flower petals like it was the most important job in the world. Sunny and Sugar, our faithful boxers, flanked her on either side. Each had a satin pillow strapped to their backs, one for each of our rings. It wasn't a wedding. Not in the traditional sense. But it was a renewal. Of vows. Of family. Of who we wanted to be for one another. Claire had been offered a high-profile role after brokering a major merger. The chairman flew down personally to try and talk her into one more assignment. Something global, expansive, career-defining. She thanked him and smiled. "I'm stepping into a new phase of my life," she said, looking past the massive portraits of whimsical dinosaurs Ari had drawn and framed for her office walls. "One I don't want to miss a second of. My youngest just turned 11, she continued, my middle one's applying to schools, and our little one is learning to ride a bike. This is the good stuff." He didn't argue. Just nodded, understanding. Because some people chase legacy in boardrooms. Others find it in kitchens, treehouses, and bedtime stories. Dave's old recliner still sat in the living room, weathered and soft. On tough days, when he felt overwhelmed, too tired, or just plain out of sorts, he'd sit there and pull up a photo on his phone. It was Ari holding her baby sister Haley for the first time. Her small arms wrapped tightly around the infant, her smile so wide it barely fit the frame. It was his anchor. And it never failed to pull him back to center. Mara stood waiting outside the hospital room, Ari in her arms, Susan and Sol by her side. Grandparents through love, not blood. But you'd never know the difference. They had been folded into the family so naturally, so completely, that most people just assumed they always belonged there. And maybe they had. When the nurse finally called them in to meet baby Haley, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the doctor had to clear her throat more than once. Tears fell freely, but they weren't the kind born from sadness. They were from awe. From grace. From watching a broken story be rewritten by choice, by time, and by the people brave enough to keep showing up for one another. Ari tiptoed closer and reached for Haley's tiny hand. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm your big sister." Claire looked at me then and I at her. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. This was home.